Hi, it's Lipstick Gal. Thank you so much for watching today. I wanted to talk about some makeup brands, ones that either I've wanted to love and I never quite get there, or ones where they used to have my full and complete attention and something happened and now I'm like, wait, what? Are you even still around? Now, I have a previous video like this. It's not quite exactly this. It's like my favorite and my least favorite. I will link it for you here and the description box down below. But I thought it might be like an interesting conversation to have like over a cup of coffee. So I've got my coffee here and let's talk about it. The first brand that I instantly thought of is MAC Cosmetics. Now, I know there are some people who are diehard fans, and I know that there are so many people who are, huge YouTubers who started out as artists at MAC. And they have, if nothing else, a nostalgic love for MAC. I'm one of those people who I remember the makeup scene before MAC. Now, I know MAC was created in 1984, but I don't remember seeing MAC as part of like a beauty staple until the 90s. And then it was everywhere. Like when I was in college, all my best friends had MAC lipsticks. MAC lipsticks and Cargo lip glosses. Remember those Cargo quads? Okay, Cargo, forgotten brand. I don't even know if they're still in business. But I remember everybody was obsessed with MAC. Here's what's interesting to me. I wanted to love MAC so much, I probably spent at least a couple $1,000 on MAC products. I used to have a ton of MAC lipsticks. I used to have concealers, powders, foundation. Like they made it, I tried it. The first time I remember going into a MAC, I think I went into a MAC store in a mall. I was not married. I was done with college and I had a little spending money and I was instantly intimidated. And you may know this feeling of, and it doesn't have to be MAC, but going into any beauty space and feeling kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I had one of those very made up, very knowledgeable MAC artists come up to me and they were unimpressed. And I don't know, I'm not one of those people who feels like you need to go in like fully glam to like a makeup space. I feel like you should go in however you are and get what you're looking for and there should be no judgment. But I always really felt judged by the artists in a MAC store or at the MAC counter. But that aside, I remember going in and of course they're trying to sell me all the things and I remember buying a full face, foundation, powder, eyeshadow, eyeliner, mascara, lipstick, lip liner, like you name it, they sold it to me. And I remember kind of being that person where I went in looking, I felt like myself and I came out looking like a completely different person. And maybe that's why I never really liked MAC. Now, MAC was the first brand that I remember seeing really interesting and different eyeshadow colors like blues, greens, reds, oranges, like actual rainbow colors. They weren't kind of like those neutral, a soft plum, a satin plum, or kind of like not too smoky of a gray. Like they had actual colors. And I always admired that. I'll just tell you, I think my struggle was I didn't really understand at the time when I was really trying to love MAC what I wanted out of makeup. I knew what I had been wearing was very natural, very not much of anything, very light with a bold lip. And I wanted a little bit more, but I went from like me with a bold lip to like, who is it? And I think that's really what bothered me. And I feel like from the first time I went in the mid 90s to the last time I went in to the MAC store, and it was what, 2011, 2012, I just felt like it wasn't finding enough things that suited my makeup aesthetic. And by that point, I knew myself. By 2012, I knew what sort of makeup I liked. I knew what sort of products looked best on my skin. And did I look okay when they did my makeup? Yeah. Could I recreate the look when I did my makeup? Yeah. Was it the best makeup I'd ever worn? No. And I think that for me, and maybe I didn't try enough of their formulas, but I felt like I gave it not just the good old college try. Like I had so much MAC at one point. I just couldn't get it to work for me in a way that I felt like a beautiful version of myself. I always felt like I was a different person. And maybe that's why MAC and I just never really clicked. All right, last time I did one of these videos, I did not mention a brand that I used to be obsessed with, obsessed. I tried everything. They launched it, I bought it, and that's Colourpop. Now, I still do have a soft spot in my heart, but I feel like I have outgrown the brand. There are still some core products from the brand that I love. I love their Super Shock like highlights and eyeshadows. I think those are really good products. I feel like they do have a lot of other products that are nice, but it just comes down to, for me, I got overwhelmed. I felt like when Colourpop first came on the makeup beauty scene, they were doing something completely different than everybody else. And their first product, the Super Shock Shadow, I remember buying Taco. Do you remember that shade? It was like a really bright matte blue. And I was like, what am I doing buying a blue eyeshadow? I don't like blue eyeshadow, but it was the texture. It was like the longevity. It was the way that it laid down on my eye. It was just stunning and different. I had never felt anything else like that before. Now, some of you are gonna go, but wait, don't you remember the Maybelline Dream Bouncy Blush? I know that they were kind of putty and moussey textures before, but nothing that had really like reached out and like pulled me in like the Super Shocks. And then after that, addicted. I had so many, and I love them. And then when they started branching out into other things, there was a long time when I felt like their brow products replaced my more expensive Anastasia products. I used their brow pencil and their brow gel for quite a long time. I remember really loving their gel pencil liners and their lippy pencils. Lippy sticks, obsessed with the lippy stick. I loved the lippy stick. I had so many. But the problem for me was always how quickly the products either dried out and quit performing, like their lip pencils and eye pencils, or how I felt like the component itself would fail. With the eyebrow pencil, I would be brushing it through and then I'd flip it over to the spoolie end and the packaging would crack and break, so as I was brushing it through, the spoolie would fall out. I really feel like, yes, it is really affordable, but it feels so fast fashion, like fast fashion makeup, that nothing is built to last. I think there's a good chance that I would still be using, I have some Colourpop products, but I think I would be using more Colourpop products if I felt like the components were a little bit sturdier. And if I felt like the products didn't have such a short shelf life. I remember buying their Luxe Gloss and like less than 6 months later, it smelled like a gross crayon. It had gone bad. I feel like the lip products, especially their Luxe lips, their lip glosses, their lip oils, like I feel like a lot of their products don't have a very long shelf life. And then beyond that, the products that do last a little bit longer, because the lippy sticks would last longer, but then they would kind of dry up and the actual lipstick would kind of dry up and shrink. And then when I would open it, if I took the cap off and it wasn't like pointing up, if it was pointing down, the whole bullet would just fall out because whatever was emollient in there had kind of shrunk and it wasn't fitting in the component anymore. I feel like that happened also with some of their blotted lips. I love the blotted lip formula. I think this is such a good formula. And this is the only lip product I have from Colourpop. It's such a pretty shade. I love this. I also wish that they kept shades longer. I know that the idea is constantly turning things over and over to keep us intrigued and interested, but I want my favorite shade. I don't want it to be limited edition. If I fall in love with a shade, I want to know it's there when I run out of it. Despite the fact that Colourpop has really changed the landscape of the beauty space, I remember when they came out with their monochromatic palettes, like we were all just gaga for them. I remember buying so much makeup that is never going to be the sort of makeup I would use, but it was so different from everything else. I had to have it. Like the red eyeshadow palette. I don't know why I thought I was going to be wearing red eyeshadow, but it was new and it was exciting and I had to have it. I don't know. I feel like that happened a lot with Colourpop, but that was a brand that really had me, by the lapels and pulled me in and I wanted all of it. And then there came a point where they started releasing things almost weekly. And sometimes multiple releases that I just got so overwhelmed. It was like drinking from a fire hydrant. There is no, let me have a sip. It's just like you're completely bombarded, overwhelmed, like you can't handle it. And that's when things started to change for me and I was not as enamored with Colourpop. And since then, I've also realized that I've outgrown the brand because they're definitely targeting a younger audience. That's totally fine. You need to know who your audience is. You need to make sure that you target them and that all of the products are fitting your target audience. I get that from the marketing standpoint. I feel like if they were to change just a few things like their components and a few of their formulations for added longevity, I think they would have more people purchasing from them. I know they definitely have slowed their release schedule in the last year or so because I don't feel like we're getting as many Colourpop releases. I think they're listening to most of us going like, it's too much. But I still feel like it's one of those brands that maybe I'd be willing to purchase from if there was enough of a shift. But it used to have me like heart and soul, and now I'm like, I don't even know what their latest release is. Another brand that used to have me heart and soul and that I used to purchase almost everything from the instant it came out was the balm. Do you remember the balm? I really feel like the brand kind of fell off the face of the earth. I remember when the balm was everywhere. Everywhere. The first time I remember being introduced to the brand was through Emily Noel. And I still love Emily, but I remember when she was using their eyeshadow palettes and I bought like Balm Jovi, the rock and roll palette, and then I just kept going from there. You know, this, that, the other, Mary Luminizer, their, what was it, the Take Home the Bronze. Like, they had so many great products. I remember all of the Meet Matte palettes, like Meet Matador, Meet Matrimony, you know, Meet Matte Nude. I had so many of those palettes. I remember they had some travel palettes. They just had some really, really cool things. And part of it was the kind of more vintage packaging that I really liked, but I also thought they had beautiful formulas. I remember when the whole internet was like gaga for Mary Luminizer, and then there was Cindy Luminizer, and there was Betty Luminizer. Like, they had all of the different shades of luminizers, and they were just kind of like the only thing anybody wanted to wear. And what's interesting to me is that I feel kind of like they nobody knew about them, and then a lot of people knew about them, and then they started to like decrease, and then they did something interesting. And I know they were doing it to be eco-conscious, which I appreciate, but I feel like they changed their packaging so dramatically when they took out magnetic closures, when they took out mirrors, so that you could easily recycle things. And everything was already in originally cardboard packaging, but it was less sturdy cardboard packaging. It felt all of a sudden like something that wasn't going to last long enough to get through the product in the container before it was all going to fall apart. So I don't know. I know why they did it, and I think it was a really thoughtful and conscious move on their part, you know, better for the environment, but I don't really know that it was a good move for them, because I feel like once that happened, and maybe it was just they had their moment in the sun those years where everybody was buying their products, but it's been a long time since I've seen anybody here in the YouTube beauty space use the balm. And I'm assuming they're still, I don't know, let me check. Part of me is like, are they still making products? Still around, still making new products. They have a Miss Nude York palette. So it's like their old, what were the ones where they had the little naked ladies and little naked men, and the pans were like covering up parts of the figures. I feel like this is very much in that, still has that vintage vibe to it, but no mirrors, no magnetic closures. But it doesn't, I don't know, I feel like prices have changed because now this palette is only $32. I remember paying a little bit more for some of the balm products, but they still have a full line. I don't know who's buying this brand. They still have like their, you know, their matte lipsticks that everybody loves, their Schwing eyeliner. I remember people being obsessed with Mary Luminizer. They still do have some of their really core products, but they're continuing to make new things. I just haven't heard about them in a long time. And there was one point where I could do a full face, foundation, concealer, brushes. Like, I had everything from the balm, everything. It's been a long time since I've really thought about the balm, much less wanting to make a purchase from the balm. And I didn't even know whether they were still around. So good to know that they're still there, but I'm wondering why it is that they are no longer as prominent in the beauty space as they used to be. Fenty is another one of those brands that I know has changed the beauty space. The minute they launched their matte foundation with 40 shades, nobody had ever done that at launch. Like, I know that Lancome and Estee Lauder eventually got to 40, 50 plus shades of foundation, but the minute Fenty launched with a shade for almost everyone, it changed the way that people thought about inclusivity. It changed the way that we thought about what a company could do or what a company should do. And I love that so much. So there's been a lot of love for Fenty, but I remember trying their first ever eyeshadow palette. A friend of mine had it, and it was so, it was so lackluster. cause like, what is this? Cause like, I felt like there were so many things that were good about the brand, and I didn't want to go and buy everything. I wanted to go try one thing. And I remember swirling my fingers in that first, was it like a Moroccan something? It had like a navy blue cover to it, and it had like little corners that were cut out of it. It was really pretty packaging. The colors on the inside were beautiful. I remember loving the idea of it. And before I went to purchase it for myself, one of my friends had it, and I was swatching it, and I was like, what, that's it? That's it? And I was like, no. So I never fell in love with their matte foundation because it was too high coverage and it was too matte for me. I remember their eavesdrop. I always ended up looking like a grease ball. So when they came out with their kind of like their glowy filtered eavesdrop situation, I was like, no. And now with the stick foundation, I'm just hesitant. And I know it's one of those things that if I have a negative first impression, I'm not gonna go back. I remember trying their Diamond Bomb highlighter, one of their Snap Shadows, like the little 6 pans, didn't love those. The only thing that I really love from Fenty, and I am always excited about, is their Gloss Bomb. I think they make an amazing gloss bomb, and for the amount you're getting in the package, I feel like it's really worth that high-end price, because there's so many other brands that will give you half of that and still charge you the Fenty price or more. And I know as prices are going up, I'm looking for value wherever I can. So I like their bronzers and blushes and their glosses, but I feel like so much of the rest of the brand, I want to be excited about it. I want to love it. I just haven't gotten there yet. And I think that's interesting to me, and I don't know what it is that's holding me back from loving Fenty as a brand. If you have any ideas, or maybe you feel the same way, let me know what those are, because I really want to love Fenty with my whole heart. I just haven't gotten there. The last brand I want to talk about today is one that I used to be head over heels for. Loved, 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 even though the aesthetic was very different than how I wore makeup, but it always, like, instantly I was interested and wanted to know more. And I always like, well, maybe that's not for me, but that is such like it was such an artistic take, and that's KVD. Now I know KVD, there's a lot of problems with Kat Von D as a person, as a tattoo artist, and the line that she created was so different. And I know now it's owned by Kendo, so it's not even like Kat Von D's brand, but I feel like when it was Kat's brand and it was her aesthetic, like that Trooper eyeliner that came out in like the brush tip, we all had to have it. I remember when she was putting out eyeshadow palettes, I think there were 5 shades in like a metal container with really interesting, look like tattoo flash art on the front, and they were in black metal packaging, and they came with a little short kohl or gel pencil. Oh my goodness, I had 3 or 4 of those, loved those. Then the eyeshadow palette started getting bigger. She came out with foundation. Remember the shade and light for the face? Oh my goodness, that was so, like, people were doing contouring. I remember it was a big deal that ABH was doing it as well as Kat Von D, but I never ended up getting one of those, because what was I gonna do with the rest of the palette? I mean, like, there's only a couple of shades in there, but I felt like there were so many interesting things that were so intriguing from the brand. And now, okay, I know we've gone through a rebrand. I know we're not owned by that person and it's not their vision anymore. But now I'm like, does anyone have a vision for KVD? Because I want to, I'm curious. There's like a couple of things that make me go, But then I'm like, like their new tubing mascara looks interesting. There have been so many iconic products from the brand. I'm just thinking about the tattoo liner, their Everlasting lipstick, their Shade and Light face palette, their Shade and Light eye palette, their foundations, their Locket foundation. I know their Apple Balm foundation went viral. I know that their new concealers, new foundations, their liquid foundations are also very popular. The reason I never fell for any of the foundation products, they were always too high coverage for me. And I know that when Kat Von D was kind of like the aesthetic juggernaut behind the brand, she wanted to look like a porcelain doll. She definitely had a very distinct perspective on makeup, and it was way more makeup than I wanted to wear, but I loved the eye products. The lip products, although they didn't budge, they were the most comfortable of all of those long-wearing liquid lipsticks. They just weren't kind to my lips, but I loved the matte lipsticks that came in like the little studded plastic tubes. Loved those. I felt like there were so many good things that were coming out of KVD, and I feel like since Kat sold the brand and Kendo purchased it, I feel like there is not as strong a perspective behind it. But I'm looking through like what they have. Their Dazzle Longwear eyeshadow sticks, those looked so interesting, but not enough to pull me in. Their new tubing mascara, also crazy interesting, but is it enough to pull me in? Sadly, no. And then I heard somewhere, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the Tattoo Pencil Liner, their new liner shades are actually the formula, because Kendo Beauty used to own Marc Jacobs Beauty, and they owned the formula for the highliners. I think I heard it was on the podcast Beautiful and Bothered with Johnny and Kevin. They were talking that they had heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, that Kendo had recently made new eyeliners for the KVD brand, hoping to, pull people in. And there are these really bright, like amazing bright colors and stuff, but I don't know that that's enough. And unless you're really letting people know this is the formula that you love, that you can't get anywhere else, but you can get it here now, I don't know. I just feel like, how long can you live on your everlasting lip good lipstick and your tattoo liner and your shade and light palette before all of a sudden like people try other things and fall in love with something else, or the aesthetic changes? Because remember when matte lips were all the rage? Not as much anymore. I think it's really interesting. So KVD was one of those brands that, even though it wasn't always like everything from the brand was like perfect for my personal taste and my makeup aesthetic, it still pulled me in. It still caused me to dream in color. It still really held my attention. And I feel like at this point, it has me wondering, is anybody in charge of releases for KVD over at Kendo? Because right now I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I'm very unimpressed. I would love to know what brands are the ones that you used to love, or that you've tried really hard to love and it just doesn't work for you. I would love to know. Let me know in the comments section down below. I will also put in my description box a link to that previous video where I talk about my favorite and least favorite brands. And I think it's interesting to talk about it. Thank you so much for making the time to watch today. Have an incredible day, and I will see you again soon.